Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. This is Brendan Lee from Consciousness and Skill Worldwide. Glad you can make it back. Another question. Brendan, although I hear it is possible to become enlightened from one to the other moment, for most people it takes years. So not decades of study and work, right? Like you've mentioned, you've studied with Peter for many, many years, and I assume that there's still lots of work to be done. Yes, true. But, depends how you hold it. I struggle with the correct strategy to create the environment to be able to commit all or most of my time and energy into doing consciousness work. I assume that many others with me find themselves in a position of a career when their interest to do consciousness work is sparked. Yeah. My current strategy is to save up enough money to provide me to live doing consciousness work full-time for the rest of my life. This will probably take more than a decade. In the meantime, I can try to do consciousness work as much as I can, but I feel that progress is slow. Sure, one can quit everything he or she does and have all the time in the world, but one needs food, shelter, and perhaps some money to invest in one's own progress may be helpful as well. What are your thoughts on my current strategy, and what strategy would you recommend one to take in general? Thanks for all the inspiring content. Or, thanks for all the inspiring content. Well, sir, you're welcome. All right, let me see. I'm going to pick this apart and respond and hopefully create something valuable for you. We'll see what happens. So although I hear it's possible to become enlightened from one to the other moment, for most people it takes years, so not decades of study and work, right? Well, okay, right away, it's useful to make a clear distinction between enlightenment and everything else. Or enlightenment and becoming more conscious of something that's relative. So when I talk about enlightenment, what I mean is a direct consciousness of the absolute nature of something. Okay? Now that is a non-relative. It's non-relative. I was going to say a non-relative thing, but you see what happens there when I say thing, it becomes relative right away. The mind can't do non-relative. So as in terms of enlightenment, no, it does not need to take any time. Right away, boom. Because, why? Because it's already true. Now, okay? I'm going to assert that, and then you need to discover this on your own. That's the most powerful thing I can do, is to encourage you to become conscious for yourself. Now, that's the enlightenment side. Now, there's another side of consciousness work, which is becoming conscious of something relative or having an insight or a breakthrough into the relative nature of things. And that is the world in which we live, this relative world. Now that is a whole, so I'm breaking it down, consciousness work, into like two domains, like becoming directly conscious of the absolute nature of something, or what we call an enlightenment experience, which is not an experience, and then becoming conscious of something relative. You have an insight, and then all of a sudden, you can perform better at your job, or maybe you're into martial arts and you have a breakthrough about feeling attention and awareness that allows you to have a sensitivity you never had before. These are very possible. Okay? Now, or you're doing personal transformation or personal growth. Like, what is that? Transforming the person that you are that shows up. Yeah, now that personal transformation, that takes a long time, or certain aspects take a long time because you need to rewire your brain and how you think and how you perceive even. Same with like training the body in a physical endeavor. You don't get to train nerves like as if the sensitivity in your nervous system doesn't happen overnight, although you can have massive breakthroughs where you have new skill almost right away. But that usually comes with lots and lots of hard work and or transforming the body. Like, you don't lift weights and expect to have your body transform instantly. It just doesn't work that way. The body takes time. The mind takes some time to shift sometimes, depending on what it is you're doing. So that stuff takes time. Enlightenment does not need to take any time. So right away I try to separate those and become clear what we're talking about when we're talking about certain things. So the first thing would be to get clear. What is it that you're talking about? You see, I hear it's possible to become enlightened from one to the other moment. So if we're talking about enlightenment, sure. Right away, right now, you could. For most people, it takes years. So not decades of study and work, right? Yes, no, not decades of study and work. And in addition, it's kind of tricky, or from my perspective, it's a little bit tricky because for this letter and for my response, I want to draw out, it's the mindset that you have that has you asking that question in the first place. You may want to shift that mindset from one of like trying to wonder like what's the magic formula to get enlightened to just focusing all your energy and attention on I want to become conscious now. So there isn't like this, well, what's the formula or how long does it take or as far as I can tell, the most effective mindset, and I could be wrong here, is fuck all that. I just want to get it now. And what is it? Like, what's going on here? Not questioning, how long does this take? Or how is my strategy? You see, that's a different question. So it's like, for me, I would toss all that out and just go for what's true, like crazy. That seems to be the most effective approach. You know, like Buddha eventually just sat down under a tree and said, fuck it. Or, he sat down under a tree and said, screw it. I'm just going to get enlightened or I'm going to die. Okay? So, yeah, there you go. And all his friends were like, hey, you're doing the wrong approach, you see? And they left him. And he just went for it. See, so I think that's a powerful perspective to hold when approaching enlightenment work. You know, screw what everybody says. Screw the books, beliefs, any spiritual book, anything I'm saying, anything Ralston says, anything anybody else says, just like toss it all out and go for what's true. And you will figure that out. As if figure. There's no figuring, but it gets screwy very quickly. So like you've mentioned, you've studied with Peter for many, many years. Correct. And I assume that there's still lots of work to be done. Tons. It does, as far as I can tell, it doesn't run out. Unless it does. I'm open. I struggle with the correct strategy to create the environment to be able to commit all or most of my time and energy into doing consciousness work. Okay, I understand. That is, as far as I can tell, most people's challenge is, oh, but I have a career, I have a life, I have a significant other, we have a family, so there's like other stuff that fills the time, and I understand that, and that's powerful stuff, and you shouldn't have to give any of that up. You can become conscious right in the place of the highest distraction, you see? It just so happens that the way we're wired up as human beings, at least in this day and age, is when distractions come, our attention is locked onto the distraction. It is not questioning what's going on during the distraction. See, so it's a huge challenge. I get that. And you struggle with the correct strategy, that's okay. If you want to create a strategy, you can create it yourself. You know, I don't necessarily want to be, I get questions very often, where people are asking me, well, what should I do or how should I be? And I am standing on, there is no way you should be, okay? If you want to create a powerful strategy, you can. If you want to create a weak strategy, you can. And I want to invite you to consider your own strategy in your own life and consider what is best for you and then do that. That would be my advice. I assume that many others with me find themselves in a position of a career when their interest to do consciousness work is sparked. My current strategy is to save up enough money to provide me to live doing consciousness work full-time for the rest of my life. This will probably take more than a decade. It doesn't have to. In the meantime, I can try to do consciousness work as much as I can, but I feel progress is slow. Sure, one can quit everything he or she does and have all the time in the world, but one needs food, shelter, and perhaps some money to invest, and one's own progress may be helpful as well. What are your thoughts on my current strategy, and what strategy would you recommend one to take in general? Thanks for all the inspiring content. Thank you. You're welcome. Hey. So let's see, a few things come to mind that I hope will help in some way. The first thing that came to mind as I was considering this letter earlier was I want to talk to you about a friend of mine. And this friend of mine, we created the GSD principle together, which is get shit done, but that's another story. And the way my friend lives her life is very free, and she can travel whenever. She spends half the year in another country, and people, when they talk to her, they're like, oh my God, I wish I could do what you do. You see, and then sometimes people will talk to me like that. Oh, wow, you have a life. I wish I could live that way. You see, I'm very free. I make my own schedule now. It took a long time to get that way, by the way. But people like, oh, I wish I could have your life. And both her and I would say, it's like, you can. See, people always say, well, I wish I could. And the truth is, you can have that type of life. Now, what's also true is, if you want to, say in her case, if you want to live life like her, there are certain things you cannot have, likely. There's like in a certain sense, there's a balance or a give and take. It's like, yeah, well, I need to live footloose and fancy free. Yeah, but do you like creature comforts? Do you like to have your house a certain way? You know, if you're not independently wealthy, my friend, she goes and busts ass half the year. She works her ass off for half a year and then travels for half a year. You see, so there's like this balance. You got to do something for the money. You see, and then are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to live in the conditions that if you have a traveling lifestyle, if you're not independently wealthy, demand that you have? Are you willing to do that? And most people are not. They're like, oh, I like my bed. I like this. I like that. And it's like, well, you can't really have both in a certain sense. Maybe you can. I think if you're independently wealthy, you could. But if you are doing it your own way and providing for yourself 100% and you don't have a shitload of money, then you're going to have to work. And you decide if that's what you want to do. Or maybe there's a wife out there a partner in crime who can do things with you like that, and you can handle it. It just depends on what people are willing to create. However, in this day and age, it seems like people are focused on career, job, money, stability, security, these things. I don't know if that's helpful there. So my current strategy is to save up enough money to provide me living doing consciousness work full-time for the rest of my life. Now, a danger I want to talk about is I just want you to consider I want you to consider the reality of doing consciousness work and versus the fantasy. Now, I'm not saying that there's a fantasy here, although I have a suspicion that there may be some fantasy involved, and that's okay. I want to gently encourage you to consider the fantasy of engaging in the kind of work versus the reality of it. Now, the fantasy is awesome. Oh, I can sit down under the Bodhi tree. I'll be like Buddha. I'll become free from all suffering. I will love everybody and become directly conscious of my true nature and be happy the rest of my life. Yes, it's a great fantasy. Now, consider the reality. The reality of being like Buddha, say, sitting under a tree is just, if you want a dose of the reality, take your body outside and then go sit under a tree for an entire day. Like, just sit there. Don't do anything. Don't bring your phone. Don't talk to anybody. Just sit. Okay? Now, if you can do that for a day and you really like it, all right, hey. If you can do that for a week and you like it, if you can do that for a year and like it, okay. But likely, you'll find that if you go outside and sit under a tree, you'll get bored really fast. Likely. Now, let's see, what's the power in me saying this? The power here is, I just want you to consider fantasy versus the reality. And yes, you're completely correct. People need to eat. You know, like Peter would tell stories And one of the things he says is like, consider the monks in the olden days. They did their monk training, but half the day they're working in the field. Why are they working in the field? Food. Where do they sleep? In a monastery. Shelter, of course. Your body needs these things, otherwise it does not survive, it dies. So again, it's like you have to balance, and then in this day, nowadays, you work, you make money, the money provides for you. You go to the grocery store, you buy your food, you cook, you eat. If you have a family, your focus is going to be on that. So if you want to become conscious, I would recommend you need to be questioning, or I want to encourage you to be questioning while you are doing your daily activities. Like, what is life? Or, what is this activity? Or say you're with a partner. Oh man, that's like an intimate partner is huge training ground for reactivity and your own emotional constructs and like how you're constructed as a person, because they're going to rub you the wrong way. I don't know one single intimate relationship that has ever gone smoothly the whole time. If you have, let me know, and I will be extremely impressed and probably think you're lying, okay? Because there's no way it goes smoothly. And so then if you are with an intimate partner, for example, and they rub you the wrong way, and all of a sudden you're like, I got something going on. Hello, there's some work to be done right there. Bingo. You can start questioning what's going on with me such that even arises. Okay? Now, so tons of work to do in life. And tons of opportunity to become more conscious. Now, if you're working on something, say in your job or your career, I definitely am a proponent of questioning. You see, start contemplating. You have a challenge at your work. Start contemplating, like, what's the problem? How can I be more effective? What is it that creates effectiveness here? How can I master my work? That's in the domain of the relative and your work and being effective and mastery, stuff like that. This is also an aspect or something where you can apply questioning to. You see? And then in terms of becoming conscious of the absolute nature, well, as far as I can tell, when you're talking about like strategy to become good at that, one of the things that I consciously do is minimize distractions. You see, like if you look at the environment around here behind me, I just cleaned up a little bit because we were expecting some guests, but I keep it quite organized. And then when people do contemplation intensive, say they come here for a contemplation intensive, which this is the most powerful thing to do as far as I can tell, aside from doing like an apprenticeship or something like that, is a week-long workshop live. That's extremely powerful. Anyway, shameless plug. There you go. Come on down. Sign up. Yes, very good. Is the environment is clean. We don't keep writing around because people's minds get distracted, especially when they're in a very intense environment. They'll look for anything to get undistracted. Like I catch people reading the menu book in the back that we use for cooking. You see, and I'm like, hey, no reading. No phones, no electronics, no. I wouldn't have stuff of my life laying around, like work paraphernalia laying around that my mind will get distracted. That's if you are trying to create a very intense and very distraction-free environment, because then your mind has nothing else to do but to focus on what's true right now. And even then, you will find ways to distract yourself using your own mind, like getting tired. Oh, I'm just so tired. And no, that's probably the mind making you tired. Or you'll get lost in fantasy. Or you'll get lost in intellect. I wonder what the enlightenment and thinking and wondering and trying to piece things together. This is all distraction. Physical reality and perception itself is the best distraction ever. And you're not going to get out of that. So you need to just notice that is also the case when you're questioning the absolute nature of reality. Okay? So I feel like I've hit most of what you wrote on your letter. I hope this has been useful and helpful. Okay? I'll review a little bit. What are your thoughts on my current strategy, and what strategy would you recommend one take in general? Thanks for all the inspiring content. Yeah, in terms of strategy, it's up to you. That's what I support. It's your choice. Now, I can advise you on things that seem to be more effective or less effective, but ultimately the choice is yours, and that's how I want to stand by this. It's up to you. You live your life. And if you want a powerful life, then you make it powerful. If you want to become conscious, you become conscious, because you are the one that has to do it. There's nobody that can do it for you. That's the truth. And I would support you in that, in whatever ways I can. And then a general strategy. Here's something that could be useful in general life, and I would recommend this, is questioning. You can question anything. Not necessarily questioning its validity. That could be an aspect, but like questioning the nature of it itself. Say you have a reaction. What's the nature of the reaction? Say you're looking at, you're moving through life. You can be asking, who am I? Who is this one moving through life? Or if you know who you are, you can be like, what is my nature? Like, what am I? Yeah, I'm really angry. Okay, what's the nature of me while I'm angry? What's the nature of me while I'm distracted? You see, what's my nature when I'm doing whatever? Okay? You can question anything. And that seems to be an approach that it is related to increasing your consciousness. Also, you could be honest, because there's a link between honesty and what's true. And becoming conscious is becoming conscious of what is, not what isn't. What is true. And maybe the nature of that is, well, who knows? See, but then your job is to become conscious, and questioning and honesty, brutal honesty, seem to be linked to these things. Okay, so those I would recommend as courses of action that would help push you in the direction of becoming more conscious, given daily life. All right, so thank you very much. It's been real. Brendan Lee from Consciousness and Skill Worldwide. Until next time, see you later.